Today, I want to talk about the lightest topic that you can possibly think of. Something that is, so wholesome and so comedic and family friendly that there couldn't possibly be anything else worthy of posting on YouTube. And that is the topic of multiculturalism, which is always great when you know that there's a white guy in front of a camera talking to you about multiculturalism. You know that the world is going in a great direction. Because back when this happened in the 1930s, we almost had 80 million people killed, so it's not really the lightest topic. However, I'm not going to be criticizing multiculturalism today, and I'm also not going to be praising it. I'm simply going to be stating what is arguably the fact. There is a very common trend of immigrant communities coming together in one place and then making that place predominantly spoken by their language. This is something that annoyed me for a very long time because one of the first places that I pretty much got accustomed to living in for a long time after my family moved all around the world for a number of years was Miami. So I'd come to, live in Miami as a child, and I was getting accustomed to the English language, which my parents did not speak as their first language. I was getting accustomed to how it is spoken. I sort of had to do my homework by myself. I was getting accustomed to elementary school. And it became very clear to me that I was lacking behind in the pronunciation aspect of the English language, which of course is not a worry now. I have the most wonderful command of the English language, as can be told by the numerous audiobooks which I've narrated for myself, which receive comments like, "Stop pronouncing the word duh so weird. Why is there a Russian guy narrating this? What is this speaker? Why did Jacob hire this guy to narrate his book? This guy's voice is ass." So never voice your own audiobooks. I'll continue to do it just because it's much cheaper, but never do it yourself if you ever write. English was very difficult for me back then, not because I didn't know it, but because my accent, thanks to my family heritage, sounded extremely weird. And if you look at some of my older videos, the ones I made in like 2014, 2015, God, that's almost 12 years ago now. How long have I been doing this? No subscribers? Thanks. Anyways, if you look back at some of those older archive videos that I have up on other channels or on Daily Motion where I used to post videos, for some reason, it's a whole story. But if you look at those little Minecraft Let's Plays or whatever, I have a very harsh accent. So naturally, with that accent, people didn't assume I spoke Spanish. Up until that accent sort of decreased, English became my primary language. I began speaking English every single day, and of course I'm a white guy in Miami. So, they're just gonna pray and hope that I speak Spanish. Pero yo no hablo español mucho. Yo no hablo mucho de español. Yo solo hablo un poco de español. Porque yo vivía en Miami, sur de Miami. Lo siento. So, very little command of the Spanish language and of the English language, but as my command of the English language increased, so did the expectation upon me to speak Spanish. And so because so many Cubans and Venezuelans and Colombians and Peruvians and Ecuadorians and Chileans and Argentinians and who knows who else, definitely not Spanish people, moved up to Miami in search for a better life, I became isolated in this community where pretty much everybody around me was speaking the Spanish language, and I wasn't. So it's very difficult to go to a gas station and, buy some gas or buy coffee or check out at the register instead of paying with the little card when nobody speaks the same language as you do. And it sort of felt like a lot of them were looking at me, particularly the service workers, as if not knowing Spanish was my fault. In fact, in the university that I was studying at, we had a kitchen. We had a kitchen that we could go to and get our food. And these people that were employed at the kitchen, I swear, when I started the university, they were there. When I was finishing my studies, they were still there. So for multiple semesters, they were always there at the beginning and the end of the semester. And for about 3 or 4 years, they were there. And every single time that you would walk up to the fish line, they would be like, "Do you want that? They wouldn't even say a word, sorry. They wouldn't say, "Do you want that?" No, they would just point, "Uh, uh, uh, uh." They would make like caveman noises while pointing at it. I know what fish is in Spanish. It's pescado. Yo quiero un pescado. Yo quiero un pescado frito, por favor. And apparently that makes their day. But in the 3 or 4 years, they didn't bother learning how to say fish in English. That annoys me a little bit, you know? Not because I have any problem with their heritage, of course I don't. There are many wonderful Spanish songs that play on the radio sometimes and I don't understand them. That's great. I still want to talk to you though, you know what I mean? Like if we're gonna have a thing where we have a nation full of different groups of people, I want to talk to you. You know, I learned English as a young kid. My parents wanted me to learn English so that I could talk to people and so that I could get along and so I could express my ideas with you. Once this was a skill for me. I had to study in front of books and learn these words. Now they come like second nature because it is my primary language now and I do write and publish and speak in it. But it didn't used to be. So I had to learn it. It was a skill. It was something that I had to put effort into. And granted, I put much less effort into it as an adult would than an adult would because I'm, you know, a kid. I was a kid. Still am now, but much older. But it was still something that I had to put a tremendous amount of effort into. And, you know, I started working as an English tutor. I started speaking. I actually started teaching some students from places like Peru and El Salvador on how to speak English. And after just a little bit of the, you know, trying and reading things in English, you sort of start to get the hang of it because Spanish and English are very similar languages. I see the same pattern repeat with my family, so I'm not just complaining about, you know, Spanish speakers because they're Latinos or whatever. I don't care. Man, you know, it's growing up in that culture, you become so accustomed to it. It's basically your default. Whenever I go to Europe, I'm just stunned at the very little amount of Mexican and Hispanic cultural influence that there is over Europe, and I get very sad and offended, and I'm thinking, where's the Taco Bell? It's very sad. But you see that a lot of these immigrants, you know, they still listen to the media in their own language. If they migrate as adults, which a lot of them do, they don't know how to speak English to the full capacity that they know how to speak Spanish or Portuguese or the native language. They always get along better with people who speak the same language as they do. Second generation immigrants, they always speak English better. They're raised by their parents into, you know, a new nation, the United States of America. And of course, they retain some of that heritage. They get very mad when you call them Latinx. But they're still very, you know, reasonable with the English language. They perhaps have even less of an accent than I do. They're extremely accustomed to it. They think in it. And even though Spanish plays a big role in their lives, or Portuguese does if they're from a place like Brazil, or even occasionally places like Spain or Portugal, imagine that. It's a much toned down, much smaller version of that. However, with people who migrate here when they're older, such as my parents, you know, my dad first came to the Northeast United States in the 70s or the 80s. It's been a long time since he first stepped foot in the United States, way before I was born. And even because he had only managed to get into the United States once he was like 20, 25, even he, to this day, has a very heavy accent when he speaks English, and he acknowledges it is because he started speaking English when he was a lot older and he didn't have any exposure to it when he was younger. My mom also makes common and grammatical mistakes in English. She speaks English with a very heavy accent where people immediately ask my parents where they're from. That is because they didn't learn that language as children, and they think it is actually a huge advantage to understand English as a primary language, because despite the fact that they have, like, you know, high ambitious jobs where they're high up in networking and they're talking to all these people, there's always that barrier of not knowing the language, because when you're like a worker at a place where you're getting paid just above the minimum wage and you're getting along with people who are just like you, especially if you're working at as a manager at a magazine, or you're working at a store, it won't matter that you don't speak English very well. If you're the guy, you know, who's pointing at the fish, then, you know, it doesn't really matter if you know how to say fish in English, or if you're just pointing at it and making grug or brug noises like a caveman. No, it doesn't. It didn't inconvenience my day. It's just a funny little story that I can tell about how, you know, enshrined in Hispanic-speaking culture, Spanish-speaking culture, and Hispanic culture, places like Miami and even the greater Fort Lauderdale area are. But when it comes to, you know, high-level networking jobs like being a doctor, being a professor, or, you know, anything, being a pilot, working closely with the industrial complex, Any of these jobs require an maximum proficiency of English for you to understand technical terms, be able to pronounce them correctly, and get along with multiple people while you're talking to them at the same time. You cannot have a thing where you're thinking of words in your own language, in your native language, that is irrelevant here, and you're translating them slowly and learning how to do it faster, translate faster, faster, faster to the English language. You have to learn the actual form and structure of the English language, which is where a lot of immigrants struggle. And I feel like it is a really big problem in this country that a lot of immigrants will accumulate into these circles where they're not exposed to the English language because it is harmful for them or it is difficult for them to understand. And then as more and more and more of these people come, as they bring their families, they unfortunately lose all exposure to the English language. And you get the case of the Polish woman. This is absolutely ridiculous to me. This is not a Polish woman. This is a woman that was born in Uzbekistan and brought to Poland. Of course, every single Polish person will be very eager to point it out that this is not a Polish person. Poland is the greatest country in the world. We would never do something like this. Yeah, sure you are, buddy. It's the greatest country of assholes in the world. Everybody's out to get you. But if you're a Polish patriot, then suit yourself. And you will be very happy to know that this woman was not from Poland. She was from Uzbekistan or something. But she did marry into a Polish family when she was very young with a Polish husband. And of course, I think she divorced him or something. Then she came with her several kids who, of course, know how to speak fluent English to the United States of America. And she had all of her kids do everything for her. And she never learned a word of English. 30, 40 years, never an ID. Probably never went to the store. How can you buy alcohol at the store without an ID? Never any documentation. She was what the Trump administration would pejoratively call an illegal alien, and what the media platforms like CNN would get very upset at you for calling an illegal alien. No matter what she was an undocumented migrant from Poland. And because she was white, people didn't suspect her of being an illegal immigrant. Imagine that. Illegal immigrants can be white as well. In fact, in a lot of cases they are, from places like Eastern Europe. And of course, she didn't bother to speak a lick of English, and then she got deported because after 30 to 40 years, ICE found out that she wasn't even supposed to be here in this country. And her kids were like protesting, who are American citizens, of course, like vast majority born here, or they, green carded themselves in somehow. They were complaining to the news media like, she's been here 30, 40 years, this is her home. How can it be her home when she doesn't speak to any Americans? When she doesn't know anybody here, when she doesn't speak the language, when she doesn't have identification, where she doesn't really know what it's like to live in this country because she's never bought even a single beer in it. She's been isolated in this culture where she's surrounded by her children and other people that speak Polish. And all of this just Polish culture is clamping down on her. She's watching Polish media, she's listening to Polish broadcasts, she's eating Polish food at home, chowing on kielbasa, or whatever they eat in Uzbekistan, those little dishes. And she's just like, don't deport me, I belong here. There is a level of cultural difference between people who have been here and who have integrated, but they still don't have, their papers in order. That's something that I think we should be able to forgive as a country. I don't think ICE should go on buses and kick Mexican people simply because, they have the wrong form of documentation. I think if you understand English, if you understand the concepts of this country, if you're working hard, then you should have a chance of staying in it. And perhaps I'm biased in that. Perhaps I'm a foreign, demagogue or something, just because of the fact that my parents are from a different country, or from different countries altogether based on where they lived and their location history. Maybe that. Maybe the fact that I've been raised in the United States and went to elementary school and middle school and high school and most of the university here. Maybe, that doesn't make any difference. But God, I really don't think I should be going on these buses and catching and harassing people if they know the language. But if someone has been living in this country for 30, 40 years, and they can't speak the language, and they don't have any form of ID, and they haven't been to a store in ages, and they haven't seen the sun, mathematically, that kind of person is not helping the economy of this country. They're not helping reduce the tax burden, and they are an infringement upon the workers in this country. The drive towards cheap labor and of bringing immigrants in for cheap labor and putting their families in here and making other people provide for them, making all these 20, 30-year-old Brazilian women run around all the time trying to get jobs because their sick mommy who's 90 years old is somehow, is at home and she's struggling with like 15 diseases. That's no way to run a country. You don't run a country with kinds of people like that. I'm not saying we should do anything to get rid of them. What I'm saying is that that is a very unfortunate situation. We should not have situations where immigrant groups are dragged here for cheap labor and then they find themselves disenfranchised and it suddenly becomes either the burden of the younger generations or the taxpayers, because then we have less people that are able to get education and workers get paid less as a result in general. We should have some process of assimilation for refugees, for immigrants. And something that I suggest that is perhaps a better solution than ice kicking brown people's heads in is to have a program where we are able to teach people that speak a foreign language how to navigate the English language, like I do, with paid lessons, but paid for by the government. Maybe we could assimilate these people into our culture, because some of them don't work and some of them get off of welfare and don't have ID somehow and do voter fraud and insurance fraud and commit crimes. Yeah, we should get rid of those people. But if someone is willing to work hard and they apply themselves by American ideals and they've been here for a really long time and they have some competency in the English language and they want to get ID, yeah, we should have government programs that teach these people the language. They do with the Arabs in Sweden, except this time it will actually work at integrating them. That is something that the government, I think, should look into. And the federal government is, of course, going to complain like, no, budget cuts. What budget cuts? Like, how much does this administration spend on bullshit again? Like, 2 trillion? We spent some money on really good stuff. I think the foreign policy aspect has definitely improved under Marco Rubio. But a vast majority of it, like the congressional packages, is bullshit. Like, this is the stuff that the donor has asked for. When can we actually get a responsible administration, whether Democratic or Republican, that is going to take the people's needs and accounts into concern and not have such a blatant disregard for human life, and actually work on finding a middle ground where some of these people can be deported and some of these can be integrated and we can reach a better economy and lifestyle and manner of living and human development index score that way. Maybe we can have a better culture if there isn't such a disparity between the low and high economic classes. Maybe if there isn't such a disparity between people of various languages, they'll be more eager to unionize. Maybe they'll kick the corporations' ass. The same corporations that are exploiting this country and leading to our economic and political collapse. Just something to think of, just a light topic. So, all in all, I don't think immigrants should be so isolated. I think we should teach them English in the United States of America, in this country. I think that they should have a chance at becoming a part of this experiment. And of course, if it doesn't work, then kick them out. But there has to be some sort of compromise, okay? It's not a controversial idea or statement or take in any way. Compromise is a very understandable thing. For most people, if you're not politically brainwashed by now, that is. So, yeah, that's what I think should happen. I definitely think that immigrants shouldn't have their own immigrant groups where everybody just speaks their language, because that doesn't help them. We're disadvantaging them. It's really them who are getting screwed over, not us. I don't really care if someone says pescado frito or fried fish. What matters at the end of the day is how well they are able to integrate into their environment. If they feel like they're lost in a foreign country, they will act like they're lost in a foreign country and nothing gets better. So that's just my take. Don't cancel me, or do, I don't care. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.